A daring quest, a grand adventure. Your RPG stands out from the rest with its colorful storytelling and magnificent finale. There's only one problem. Your cast of characters is bland, linear, and static. This can be an instant turnoff to an otherwise amazing video game, and therefore is an important skill to master. Characters must have depth, backstory, differentiating factors, and, most importantly, they must grow and evolve as the story progresses. This way, your characters will be memorable and lovable, bringing your video game to the next level. While all of these qualities may seem overwhelming at first, by the end of this video, you'll know just what to do to give your characters the oomph they need. Hello everyone, and welcome to another Fireside Chat. In fact, the second one this week. As you may have figured out by now, there was no live stream yesterday because Cell is out of town. As compensation for that, and our really long hiatus, there's another Fireside Chat today. Now, today's episode is somewhat related to one of the first episodes I made, Character Dialogues, the Do's and Don'ts. If you haven't watched that video, there's a link in the cards and end screen. But don't worry, if you haven't seen the other video, everything you need to know will be covered again this time around. Now, without further delay, onto today's topic, building a character. Something you might not know about me is my great passion for writing and literature. I'm an avid reader and writer, and enjoy many different types of literature, both in what I read and what I write. Because of this, certain things on this channel may find some overlap between gaming and literature, including this episode and the one I mentioned before. Whether you're creating a video game, brainstorming for a novel, or writing a screenplay, it's important to know how to create and develop a character as the story progresses. Like I said before, poor character design can bring down an otherwise great video game, and is therefore a key element of game making. Even with games that aren't story-based, like platformers, character design can be essential, which is why I've brought you the tips and tricks needed to make the perfect, or rather imperfect, as you'll see in a little bit, character. The first step to character design is creating the base model for your character. Consider making a list of attributes for this step. Tall, short, empathetic, cold, blonde, brown-haired, etc. This should include both physical and mental emotional attributes, so that you create a larger image of the character. You might want to start with a character archetype, or a generalization of personality. This could be the strong, silent warrior, the bubbly healer, or hot-headed rogue. It might seem like a good idea to combine character traits with other attributes not commonly seen together. For example, a timid warrior. While I always advise breaking conventions, sometimes opposites make no sense, or just make a jumbled mess of a personality. Once you have physical attributes decided on, a rough sketch of your character might help you visualize your creation before you get around to creating a sprite or 3D model. Keep in mind that your character must have flaws. A perfect character will seem too good to be true and will ultimately lose your player's attention. Your characters must have issues which they will overcome as the plot progresses. After you set up raw personality traits and physical descriptions of your character, you must flesh them out, building them up to make them seem like a real individual with a real life and a real schedule. They need specifics. Where do they work? Where do they like to shop or gather goods depending on the world they live in? What is their house and home life like? This is where you need to add depth to your character by giving them a backstory. Some writers and designers give their characters full families, birthdays, college degrees, bank accounts, and so on, so that the player can truly connect with the characters. You might find it helpful to pretend as though you're getting to know the character rather than creating them. Maybe write out a conversation between you and your characters, asking them their secrets that they've never told anyone before. When deciding on an occupation for your characters, not only consider the world you're in, for example, you wouldn't have an IT in a medieval world, but also the plot. It can be easier to relate the plotline and a character's occupation when in an RPG situation. When there's a class system, a warrior class could easily be a warrior in occupation, or a cleric or other healer could be a doctor, monk, or even a priest, depending on the context. In this way, the occupation of the character is not just trivial nonsense, but relevant information, which can help to create a connection between the player and the game's characters. This can be further enhanced by the player's interactions and dialogue with the player. As a part of this, you need to give your character their own distinctive voice. Imagine your game without any names or face sprites on your text boxes. Can you tell who's talking, or does it all just sound like one slurred voice? This was talked about a little bit in my episode on character dialogue, but as a quick recap, you could use accents or dialects, but more subtly, variations in grammar or phrases. Try thinking in the character's voice as you write the dialogue, rather than your own. For backstory elements, it's important that you stay authentic. Try interviewing people of the professions involved in your plot, or doing research at your local library. If your game takes place at a different time period, this is an extra important task. The next step is to name your character. Though you might be tempted to start with a name, your name should be based around your character's, characteristics, which need to be set in stone beforehand. And no, a random name generator will not do. Keep in mind their nationality, attitude, physical appearance, and even role in the story when choosing a name. This is one of the most blatant ways to distinguish characters from each other, beside appearance. Multiple characters with the same name can be very confusing for the player. It's also important to differentiate the first letters of the names of your characters. Use of alliteration in naming can not only be confusing, especially if the character in question is not a large part in the storyline, but can appear almost comical. If you find yourself asking, was that Sarah or Savannah that gave me this relic? You might want to rethink your naming decisions. But naming isn't the only good way to distinguish characters from each other. Disposition, goals, relationships, and culture can be great options too. You could also include quirks, like a character who breaks things when upset, or one who cries easily. Little things like this can really help to build a character. Once you have your fleshed out named character, you're going to have to build and change them as the story progresses. People are affected by their experiences, and in the case of something like an epic, grueling adventure, your characters will learn and grow as people. Even small moments can make a big deal. You want to grow your characters a little at a time, thickening the plot as your characters become more vivid and involved in the storyline. Be careful not to dump too much backstory or development on the player at once. Reveal things about each character a bit at a time. Make sure that character details are all necessary to the plotline and don't become boring for the player. And of course, use that old writing technique, show, don't tell. It's better to have characters perform actions that show their growth rather than stating it. Finally, it's important to challenge characters. If the plot is too easy, not only will the player suffer, but the development of the characters will suffer. An unchallenging video game will bore the player, and a lack of major conflicts restricts the character's abilities to learn and grow, ultimately hurting the game as a whole. Overall, the characters in a video game have a huge impact on the quality and success of the game. They need a solid foundation, depth of character, a meaningful name, and development throughout the course of the story. Following the steps I've provided will not only help you to create meaningful characters, but detailed ones which will bring your game to life. Most importantly, you must enjoy creating your characters. If you don't enjoy getting to know them, how can you expect the player to have a good time? A good player-character connection can make a truly outstanding video game. And with that, remember, we didn't start the fire, we just keep it burning. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the second Fireside Chat this week, consider leaving a like. Click the link in the top right if you want to watch the related video, Character Dialogue, The Do's and Don'ts. Word on the street is that subscribing and turning on notifications can really build character. Comment if you have any tips of your own for creating a meaningful character. And, like always, feedback is welcome.